Very good. We're very pleased today to have Dorothy Williams with us as part of our Process to English interview, a cross-section of English Quebec. Thank you very much, Ms. Williams, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we always start out, we ask everybody exactly the same questions. And because this is for educational purposes, I do not ask any follow-up questions nor comment on your responses, but you are free to respond in any way you see fit. So having said that, I will start off by asking you a few background questions. Where were your parents born?
Montreal.
Okay. And you, where were you born?
Montreal.
Okay. And where did you receive your education? Elementary, secondary?
Montreal.
Okay.
Right up to my postgraduate work, Montreal.
Okay, very good. And what is your occupation or your occupations?
Well, at this point, I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm running a company called blackbiblio.com Incorporated. And that takes up a lot of my supposed free time, but I am retired, not doing the 9 to 5 anymore.
Mm-hmm. And where do you live now?
Oh, I live in Southwest Montreal, in the borough called Sud-Ouest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we're going to get kind of to the meat of the matter here, which are questions concerning your experience living in Quebec today. So I'll start off by asking you, what is the best thing about living in Quebec from your perspective?
Well, living in Quebec, I mean, I don't think of it as living in Quebec, it's home. So it is where I am. This is my place. I definitely have made many strides to claim it, to root myself here beyond the place of my birth. It was really important for me to understand my place here. Yeah, so this is home.
Okay. Now, the next question, a lot of people have trouble with, and certainly if it was posed to me, I would have trouble with it. But I'm going to ask you to respond to the question as posed, and then you can elaborate on your answer in any way you see fit. Describe your relationship to Quebec in a single word.
Warm.
Okay, fair enough. And where do you feel most at home in Quebec? For example, in communities based on language, culture, profession, or geographic location?
Most at home in Quebec. Wow, what an interesting way to put it. Most, I would say geographically. This, when I leave, this is where I want to come home to, this space where I am now. Definitely. So I would say when I talk about rooted, I've been here almost over 35 years. This is home.
Very good. Now, the next question, again, some people have asked me about it. It's a two-part question. And the second part talks about the official definition in Quebec. And people say to me, well, Dave, what do you mean by the official definition? And it's what you perceive to be the official definition in Quebec. It could be influenced by the media, by government's definitions, your peers, whatever you think the official definition is. So I'll ask the two-part question, having qualified that. How would you define a Quebecer? And do you think the official definition in Quebec includes you?
You're asking me about a belief. Do I think it includes me, or do I know it includes
Well, how would
me?
you, first of all, how would you define a Quebecer? And do you think the official definition in Quebec includes you?
A Quebecer, I think, I believe is a person that has adopted this province or has been born here and raised here and lives within Quebec. So for me, again, I guess it's a matter of geography, placement, sense of belonging. And I say that as particularly for adults that make the choice to remain here, whether French or otherwise. So yeah, it's a place, but it's also a mentality as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if people outside the province called Quebec, those that had original roots here would probably say, even though I'm living XYZ province or country, I am a Quebecer. It is a state of mind, and I think of that as very much the way New Yorkers think about themselves, or people that are in, they live in iconic, idyllic places, think of themselves. Quebec holds that, I think, because of its difference. And also because that difference is played out over and over and over again. So you either love it or you hate it, but it is what it is.
Has your sense of identity as a Quebecer changed over the years? And if so, in what ways?
Sense of identity changed. I don't think my sense of identity changed. I do know people's sense of my identity has changed, but I don't think my sense of identity, I mean, it's pretty well formed and understood myself from very, very young. It's something I carried forward as part of what I brought into what I have been doing for the last 30 plus years. And it's part of what I define as my passion and my work, is that knowledge of who I am within Quebec.
Okay. And what are some of the most difficult things about living in Quebec?
Oof. Most difficult. I'm not sure Quebec would be much different than any other place. There are swaths of population that have no clues who I am. As a Black person in this province, my history, my rootedness will still, even in 2023, seem rare, or not rare, unique, strange, exotic to some people, rather than just what it is, as a part of the Quebec fabric. I don't know if that will ever change. So my confidence about who I am as a Quebecer who happens to also be a Black woman, that's not shifted, but I would suspect that for some people, there is a change afoot in the way that they are having to think about otherness, what otherness means to them.
Okay. Now, in recent years, some members of Quebec's Francophone majority have identified a number of linguistic and cultural threats. Which of these concerns do you share and support, and which of these concerns make you feel excluded or targeted?
Which ones in particular?
Well, there's a lot of buzz out there from members of the Quebec Francophone majority, as an example, that the language and culture of Quebec, French Quebec, is under threat. So the question is, which of these concerns do you share and support, and which of these concerns make you feel excluded or targeted?
I don't really feel that the French culture and language is under threat. I think the difference has been that, or it produces one of two reactions when people feel threatened. It's either flight or fight. And the problem with the fight is that we wind up not listening to others because we're in a defensive mode all the time. And So if you're not confident or comfortable where you are and you're always feeling threatened generation after generation, then that means you're not listening to others. You're forming your own pack and relying just on your awareness of yourself because you need to protect yourself. That's a normal human reaction. It's just in terms of societal factors, it will exclude other people who aren't included in that pack. So I think that the threats, and I think that's a good word to describe it, has set up just by its own definition, an us and them reaction. And rather than, I think, we would have been stronger to have embraced it together, so that if it was a real threat or if it was something that people that weren't included could be embraced or understood that it was also their concern, then I think we'd all be stronger for it. For me, it's always been a question of not so much feeling a threat. I don't speak French well. And but I live in an English community. I've always lived in an English community. I work in English and have at times, of course, communicated in French, but my mother tongue is English. And I guess I have a little bit more options than I think in much broader terms than the borders called Quebec, even though this is home. And I'll tell you that no matter where I go, I always want to come back. So it's not like it's not like that. It's zero sum or something like that. No, even though I'm aware of that, this is still where I want to be.
Okay, having said that, what do you think is the biggest problem facing Quebec today, and how, in your mind, do you think it could be resolved?
Well, I think the biggest problem in Quebec is demography. I think part of that idea of the threat is, when I was growing up, my French neighbors, it wasn't unusual for them to have 12, 15, 20 children. Nobody is replicating like that anymore, producing numbers like that. Demographically, I mean, just the numbers over the, succeeding generations, there is a fear that the numbers are going to decline. What do you do about that? How does that position you with the rest of the country, seeing as how we have divvied our benefits and our richness on the basis of population? And what does that mean over time when you lose a certain population, part of your population to les autres? They go out of the province, they go to the States, they travel. I mean, we're increasingly in a globalized world. It doesn't really matter whether your children are growing up in Abitibi from a Quebecois family of 15, 20 generations. They see what's going on. They have their cell phones and they can bridge much, of what's out there, and awareness of the terrain, literally. It's going to be a real challenge, I think. I'm not sure that reduction of immigration solves the problem. In fact, that seems to me to be counterintuitive. But on top of all of that, it's not just about numbers, it's also the uniqueness of Quebec that we just talked about. So it's how do you save that culture when you're incorporating people or integrating people who have not grown up with that and who are bringing a different culture, which that's not what you want. It's unfortunately, we're in a post-colonial global society, and that's kind of the reality. But if your ideal Quebec includes perpetuation of a Quebecois culture, as has been defined from, the pastoral New France all the way to the present, that can be quite threatening to people and scary, because it may remain French, but French what, Quebec is not the only French part of the world, there are many French people, francophones out there. We celebrate the francophonie for a reason. But those French are not French enough, i.e. not so much French enough, but not Quebecois enough. So yes, it's about demographics, but it's also about, like I said, that uniqueness of what Quebec French culture is. And, just one of the legacies of our colonial past, and also the modern Quebec society, which is, very much more of a nuclear family than the survival of, one's offspring in a rural setting.
Now, I'm going to take a pause for a minute and ask you something off the record. Have you had an opportunity to see the great documentary, What We Choose to Remember?
No,
Okay.
that was the one that Rod did, eh?
Yeah,
Guy
Rogers.
Yeah, Guy Rogers.
Yeah, what I'll do immediately following this, I will send you a link which will allow you to watch it in its entirety for free. Okay.
Okay.
So I really encourage you to see it. Guy is a good friend of mine. In fact, he had a hand in helping me with these questions along with Brian. And we plan to be working together in the future. I always, in all my interviews, I ask if people have seen it, because to me, it more clearly defines a lot of what I am talking about and what I'm asking and what people are responding to in a way visually that it's very difficult just verbally to do. So I really highly recommend it. And I'll send you a link after that.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
all of that. The reason I bring that up at this point is in his documentary, he used a very effective visual tool, which is a show of fingers. So I'm going to ask you, with his permission, to do the same thing in the next question. Indicate by a show of fingers on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being weakest, 10 being strongest, how strongly do you feel that the joys of living in Quebec outweigh the challenges? Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, is there one last opportunity here? Is there anything else that you would like to say about your sense of identity or belonging in Quebec?
What would I like to say? Part of what I've been trying to do and trying to say to Quebec as a whole in the last, I guess, 40 years of my research and my writing is that I'm here. And when I say I'm not going anywhere, I mean, I'm not going anywhere. This is my home too. And so, if that means you have to rethink what a Quebecer is, that's okay too. This multi-generations of Black people have been in this province and have helped to, contributed as much as anybody else does, 9 to 5 over, 25 years on the job, and their taxes and all of that. So we participated and contributed. And that legacy has got to be, as far as I'm concerned, has got to be understood. It's got to be remembered. And I think the best that we could do is celebrate it and embrace it together. So, this is what I do. This is what I say and what my research is about.
Okay, very good. And I want to thank you very much officially for participating today. What I'm going to do now is shut this off and we can have a brief chat afterwards. I'd like to touch on a few points, if you wouldn't mind.
I don't hear you. You're saying what you're going to do now?
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
I just officially thanked you, and I would like to have a discussion off the record with you on a few points that you brought up.
Oh, okay.